Rag, 5 notes.
So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meditation. So, we'll follow the usual pattern. I'll give a talk, and then we'll play a part of a talk of Sri Mataji's, which relates to this talk of mine, and then we'll have the meditation. So, tonight I want to talk about Shakespeare. Actually, I want to talk about art in general and what seems to me to be one of its functions, one of the true functions of true art, that is, which is to construct the reader, spectator, or listener as a witness. Shakespeare's work does this very well. We are not meant to identify with Macbeth, for example. Rather, we are meant to see his behavior, his courage, his ambition, his gullibility, the way he allows his wife to dominate him, his stupidity and his villainy and his eventual destruction, from the point of view of a witness, enjoying the way the poet presents him, but without sympathizing with him in any way. It's not that Shakespeare wants us to have an opinion about Macbeth exactly. Over the past few days, I started reading first one and then another newish detective book that I'd seen recommended. But in each case, the author had made it so obvious what he felt about his characters that the books just weren't interesting to me. I mean, they weren't subtle. Also, in each case, the author was very concerned to let the reader know what a virtuous, sympathetic character he himself was, holding all the right liberal opinions. But Shakespeare never does anything like this. He presents us with a portrait of Macbeth without comment. There's almost no sense of authorial direction in Shakespeare. He gives us a story and lets us make of it what we will. Briefly, the plot in Macbeth, you probably know it, but it's just in case you don't, goes like this. Macbeth is a brave, distinguished soldier who plays a major part in putting down a rebellion against his king, Duncan. But immediately in the aftermath of this, he meets three witches who promise him various things, one of which is that he will become king after Duncan. This appeals to his fatal flaw, his ambition, and even more to his wife's. She's determined that they shouldn't wait until this prophecy comes about naturally. They have to act now and kill Duncan straight away. Urged by his wife, who uses the favorite argument of the animus, "What, are you afraid?" Macbeth goes ahead and does this. He kills the king. And one thing leads to another, and very soon he becomes a complete monster. But at least to begin with, he has a conscience. When he tells his wife, just after he's done it that night, that he's killed Duncan, he describes hearing Duncan's two sons waking up from a nightmare. One cried, "God bless us," and "Amen," the other, as they had seen me with these hangman's hands. Listening their fear, I could not say Amen, when they did say, "God bless us." And his wife says, "Consider it not so deeply." But wherefore could I not pronounce Amen? I had most need of blessing, and Amen stuck in my throat. And his wife says, "These deeds must not be thought after these ways, so it will make us mad." And Macbeth says he's not really taking in what she's saying. He's so caught up in the moment. "Methought I heard a voice cry, 'Sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep, the innocent sleep,'" and he goes on like that. So it's not that Shakespeare wants us to sympathize with Macbeth. That's not the point at all. He wants us to see Macbeth from the perspective of a witness, which in a way means not to have a particular opinion about him, and neither to feel sympathy or antipathy, at least up to a point. Or perhaps we can say that to be a witness is to share the opinion of God about whatever it is that we are witnessing. And that kind of opinion is very different from the usual one-dimensional human opinions that we have, or maybe the conflicted opinions that we have, and it's compassion. Actually, the degree to which Shakespeare refrains from pressing an authorial opinion upon us is very unusual. And I feel it's one of the reasons, the main reason, in fact, why Shakespeare is so mysterious to us. He wrote a great deal, he created plenty of objects, but who was he, the subject of those objects? Where do we find him in his works? What did he think about things? What were his politics? What was his religion? He lived at a time when people were much more religious than they are today, yet I don't think there's anything in his entire corpus to tell us what he felt about God. Of course, people have expressed their opinions about what Shakespeare thought, but I don't think they're right. He wrote over 150 sonnets, mostly about love, but was he himself really in love? Some of them are very convincing, especially the one that begins, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark," and so forth. Bark is a small ship. But was he really moved by the personal kind of love that he's describing? It's very hard to say. And because of this void at the center of Shakespeare's work, a lot of people have speculated that he wasn't Shakespeare at all, but somebody else, and that within his work there's a kind of secret code and so on. Or there's the great Argentine writer Borges's take on the subject in a piece he wrote, Everything and Nothing. And I'll read a bit of it with bits left out. There was no one inside him, nothing but a trace of chill, a dream dreamt by no one else, behind the face that looks like no other face, even in the bad paintings of the period, and the abundant, whimsical, impassioned words. In his 20s, he went to London. He had become instinctively adept at pretending to be somebody so that no one would suspect he was in fact nobody. In London, he discovered the profession for which he was destined, that of the actor who stands on a stage and pretends to be someone else in front of a group of people who pretend to take him for that other person. Theatrical work brought him rare happiness, possibly the first he had known. But when the last line had been applauded and the last corpse removed from the stage, the odious shadow of unreality fell over him again. He ceased being Ferex or Tamburlaine and went back to being nobody. Hard-pressed, he took to making up other heroes, other tragic tales. For 20 years, he kept up this controlled delirium. Then one morning he was overcome by the tedium and horror, being all those kings who die by the sword, and all those thwarted lovers who came together and broke apart and melodiously suffered. That very day he decided to sell his theatre. Before the week was out, he had returned to his place of birth. He had to be somebody, and so he became a retired impresario who dabbled in money lending, lawsuits, and petty usury. It was as this character that he wrote the rather dry last will and testament with which we are familiar, having purposely expunged from it every trace of emotion and every literary flourish. The story goes that shortly before or after his death, when he found himself in the presence of God, he said, "I who have been so many men in vain want to be one man only, myself." The voice of God answered him out of a whirlwind, "Neither am I what I am. I dreamed the world the way you dreamt your plays, my Shakespeare. You are one of the shapes of my dreams. Like me, you are everything and nothing. It's an entertaining piece of work, but it puts the stress, in my view, too much on the negative. It's more that Shakespeare was an avaduta, as Srimataji called him. He was beyond. He was a witness himself, and he wanted to make witnesses of us. Srimataji did say to me that Shakespeare must have spent a long time sitting on a mountain meditating in order to be as detached as he was, but that she preferred Blake for the quality of his heart. I do think we see more of Shakespeare's heart in his late romances with their stress on redemption, like The Tempest, A Winter's Tale, and Cymbeline, a little-known play, but some people don't like it that much, but I think it's rather good, of which a commentator writes, in this play, an inordinate number of characters assume disguises, have more than one name, don't know who their real parents are, or find themselves unable to decipher the complicated events around them. The pleasure of the final act, therefore, stems from the relief experienced when, after a dizzying whirl of events, reversals, revelations, and disguises, peace descends, all identities revealed and all riddles expounded. The sense of wonder produced by this miraculous untangling of complicated events is one of the signal effects of Shakespeare's late plays. Amazement that after astonishing suffering can come new hope, after labyrinthine confusions, the solace of questions answered. At any rate, in the earlier Romeo and Juliet, this address to the witness is particularly clear. We know from the outset that it is a tragedy. Moreover, we're told in its prologue of the title character's misadventured, piteous overthrows and death-marked love. So it's hardly to be expected that we should find the outcome of their passionate romance surprising. Nor are we encouraged to sympathize with them. Not exactly. Indeed, there's much that is absurd about Romeo, his melancholy romantic posturing, the superficiality of his grand passion for Rosalie, which seems so profound to him until he spots Juliet and straightway forgets all about her, and not least his jumping to fatal conclusions, as though it were more important to him to make a last great romantic gesture than it were to stop and ask himself what is really going on, what to do for the best. With Hamlet, it's the same. He's a more complicated character than Romeo and a far more attractive one than Macbeth. But that isn't to say that we're supposed to identify or sympathize with him. Shakespeare is describing states of the soul, as it were. In Macbeth, we see the state of ambition. In Romeo and Juliet, youthful, adolescent romanticism. In Othello, jealousy, and in Hamlet, something more complex yet nevertheless recognizable, the state of the puer aeternus, the eternal child, so often identified with prolonged adolescence. Hamlet is someone who, in spite of his many gifts, cannot settle to anything. Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown, Ophelia declares when he feigns madness. The courtiers, scholars, soldiers, eye, tongue, sword. Got that the wrong way around, but you get the picture. The expectancy and rose of the fair state, the glass of fashion and the mold of form, observed of all observers. There is so much that Hamlet could achieve, yet the end result of all his introspection is nothing but carnage. Hamlet is an homme fatale who leaves chaos and destruction in his wake and eventually succumbs to it himself. Lost in his intellect, nothing really touches him. He wants it to touch him. Yet whenever he gives expression to his feelings, there is something exaggerated about them, something that doesn't ring true. I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers could not, with all their quantity of love, make up my sum, he assures Laertes, who is her brother. But is that really so? What evidence do we see of this love? Lost in his intellect, Hamlet is an isolated figure, estranged from the mother whom he loves, or thinks he loves, alienated from those around him by his mordant insight, even distanced from his friends. He seems most himself with the players, the group of actors who comes into the play. But he is a prince while they are hired for the occasion. They're hardly comrades. And when his former fellow student Horatio reintroduces himself, Hamlet's response is amiable enough, yet somehow vague and self-absorbed. I am glad to see you well, Horatio, or I do forget myself. It is as though he has to remind himself who Horatio is. And again, the two of them are not on an equal footing, as is to be seen in the way that Horatio always addresses Hamlet as my lord. As for Hamlet's friends Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, he cares nothing about having sent them to their deaths. Why, man, they did make love to their employment. They are not near my conscience. But it's chiefly because he lives within the bubble of his own thoughts that Hamlet is set apart from others. Lost in his intellect, nothing seems quite real to him. How weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world, he declares early on in the play. And even the one straightforward task that the ghost imposes upon him, to revenge his father's murder, becomes a cause for prevarication rather than action. Of such people, Marie-Louise von France, who was a colleague of Jung, who I respect very much, she remarks in her book, actually, which is called one of her books, Pur Aeternus, they never step down to do something creative because they feel vaguely or foresee intuitively that if they produce the thing they have in mind, it will be much less good than what they conceive inwardly. They do not want to go through this process of creative deflation, but prefer to remain all their lifetime would-be artists or would-be geniuses on a very great scale, rather than the producer of a humble project on a very much lower scale. Because of his wit, his intelligence, and his eloquence, it is tempting to see a portrait of Shakespeare in Hamlet, but this would be a mistake. In the first place, Shakespeare stands apart from his works, as I've been arguing. In the second, Hamlet is as dilatory as Shakespeare was industrious. And in the third place, Hamlet is gravely at fault. For all his many qualities, he toys with suicidal thoughts, and his behavior towards Ophelia is nothing short of shameful. We are meant to witness him, not identify with him. Here, though, of course, we are to understand that the witness alone can be compassionate, which is a substantially different quality from that of merely being sympathetic. Not only does it go far deeper, it belongs to a different order of being altogether. So the way Shakespeare witnesses his own characters is itself compassionate. Consider Juliet. According to the scholar Harold Bloom, the revelation of Juliet's nature here in the exchange of vows with Romeo might be called an epiphany in the religion of love. Chaucer has nothing like this, nor does Dante, since Beatrice's love for him transcends sexuality. Unprecedented in literature, Juliet precisely does not transcend the human heroine. In short, in making the beautiful character of Juliet believable, Shakespeare is presenting something new in art, a love that is at one and the same time fully human, and with its innocent ardor and its courage She has to stand up both to her parents' demands that she should marry someone else and to all the social pressures against a union between her family and the family that Romeo belongs to. This is what underlines the whole play. Her love is as intensely pure as can be imagined. Yet at the same time, there's something almost comically absurd about the way Romeo and Juliet take their own lives. He thinks she's dead when in fact she's in a drugged stupor, so he kills himself. She wakes up, finds him dead, and stabs herself. When it comes down to it, Juliet is silly to do this. It's stupid, a stupid waste of a life. She's a silly 13-year-old girl. Yet Shakespeare's mastery lies in the way he presents us with the facts of the case without providing his own slant or commentary on them. He presents Romeo and Juliet's passionate love for one another in an unironic way, and it really is a beautiful thing. Yet at the same time, he positions us as the witness, aware that romantic love is not the be-all and end-all. So that's a little about how, I mean, Shakespeare is an ocean and one could talk for hours, but that's a little about how true art encourages us to witness the world. Art that is influenced by the subconscious, left-sided art, very left-sided art, has a different aim. Actually, I've written more about this in my book, Art, Love and Truth, from which some of what I've said about Shakespeare was taken, but I've added quite a lot here. Left-sided art wants to get a reaction from us. The witness doesn't react, but the art of the left side wants us to identify with its characters and sympathize with them, or it wants us to feel horrified or revolted or aroused or whatever it is by the work. Good or bad, positive or negative, it wants a reaction. It's emotionally manipulative. It wants to subordinate our attention to itself, we can say. While the art of the superconscious, of the far right side of our being, has nothing emotional to say to us. Those Bauhaus-type tower blocks I talked about a while back are just there. They don't try to appeal to us. They don't try to communicate with us at all. It's we who have to accommodate ourselves to them. And conceptual art, which is also very right-sided, dry kind of mental art, which in my opinion is art for people who don't like art, is all about ideas. Occasionally, those ideas are ideas about feelings, while still being ideas first and last, but mostly they're concerned with, as they say, interrogating assumptions, questioning stereotypes, and other sterile mental acrobatics. They want us to think, whereas real art takes us beyond thinking into this compassionate, enjoying witness state. Okay, so we'll now listen to a talk of Mother's from Ilford in London, where she mentions Shakespeare.
Feel absolutely fit. You look fit, absolutely. You look marvelous. Then, when you start expanding yourself, you start feeling your own mind, the peace, the bliss of your own mind. Many a times you find there is no thought, but the joy is just bursting in. And you just think why it has happened. Suddenly, how do I get this? Gradually, the state of joy starts increasing in its frequency, and you become joy. That is, one has to achieve. To become the joy is important. And once you become that, joy is not a duality. It's not a duality. It's not a thing in which you feel the happiness and unhappiness, but you feel the joy. Joy is a witness. It's a kind of a power of a witness which sees a drama. By seeing the drama, whether it's tragedy or comedy, it's at a point where it is just a witness and enjoying it. In the same way you see so-called comedies and tragedies of your life and the futility of your nonsensical endeavors, and you laugh at it. Oh, that's it, that's me. For example, in Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare has tried to show the futility. Always he was. According to Indian standards, he was a avadhuta, as they call it, a person who was realized and was a very evolved personality. And if you want to see how Romeo should get his realization and how he should feel that after all that happened, he should laugh loudly. If he gets realization, oh, what a fool and stupid thing I was. Shakespeare did not show him getting realization. He kept it for us Sahajogis to see it. But should have seen to it that Romeo laughs at himself and makes fun of himself. Oh, stupid Mr. Romeo, now you better settle down. But he showed very cleverly, if you see in all his Macbeth or any of his dramas, that he has tried to show the futility of our ego, our enterprises. We think that is very important in life. I would say there are so many great writers in English language, which I cannot name them in a series, but I have read them. Somerset Maugham, I would say, was another one. I was very much impressed by his writings, and I've read most of his novels because he was very much there. Crony, for example, is another one I would say who wrote Citadel, was another great person who could see the drama of stupidity. Leave alone your great poets like William Blake and all those. But all that was to show that there is a higher being, you see, which sees all this and giving you a drama of yourself, projecting it through you. That this is what you are, you see yourself. That's what they did. And despite everything, we are lost. We are lost quite a lot. We have to become the same, just like Shakespeare, to see the drama. Like Somerset Maugham, we have to become the same. To see the drama, we may not write a book, doesn't matter. But the capacity to see the drama, that's what we develop. We need not write. We may not have the flair of a pen to write, but we see it the same way as they see it, and that's the mental capacity to which we rise. Self-realization. I have seen very stupid people absolutely calling themselves gurus. You look at them and you don't know what to say, you see. You have to look a stupider person, stupider person, what do you say? Stupidest person in the presence of such a person, because he looks at you, see, and you understand he's stupid and you don't know what to do. And you get frightened of such a person, and you don't want to hurt his feelings, you see. So you look greater stupid person. and then he gives you a big lecture on something very stupid. But then you find that person, you see, big newspapers, you see, like Times, publishing such a stupid band there. Just imagine. This is what we have done to Shakespeare, to all our great writers and everyone. We have reached that state that we cannot even see the stupidity.
So if we just meditate now, so I don't know what to say after that, but if we can just go into meditation, into this thoughtless state of the compassionate witness. We just look at ourselves as the spirit and not the ego, not this person who's acting or reacting, but just above it all. And then the play becomes a play. And then we can become the enjoyer. So we just say to ourselves, Mother, I forgive. I forgive everyone. And I forgive myself. And may I be forgiven. Let me become this higher personality who's not swayed by every breath of wind of politics or gossip or personal relationships or worry or ambition, but is able to stand above, seeing these things, but not involved too much in them. Just able to see from the divine point of view that this is a play. It's all a beautiful play. A very interesting play. So I'll ask Priti now to play the Sarod music again, Anjali Khan, if you could. Thank you. So that's it for another meditation. And thank you all for joining. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you again soon, I think not till November. Thank you. Goodbye.